All right, so this video complements lab report number 3 for the week of September 14th. We did the functional movement screen really as a part of week 2, lab 2, but that didn't require anything to turn in. So make sure you get lab report number 1 in. This is lab report number 3 or lab number 3, all right? It looks like this. Download this Word document, fill it out, turn it in, and I'll see you guys on Friday. All right, so check it out. We started with the Turkish Get Up. You'll see the Turkish Get Up on the sheet when you download that. For the Monday group, we'll go through that next week. That's also a nice assessment tool. I like everyone to understand a Turkish Get Up. Various ways to get up. I teach all of my clients, young and old, especially my older clients, how to get up from the floor, what strategies they use to get up from the floor. But we really began the lab with a jam analysis. So we did a jam analysis of the squat jump. So as you are looking through this, we're looking at joint action and plane, and then all of the muscle actions. So the first one is what primary joints are involved, what joint actions are involved, and what plane are each one of those joint actions involved in, and then go through the muscles. And so figure out your squat jump joints and muscles involved. One of them should be the knee, and we did the knee in today's class. So let's think about the knee. If I'm going to do a squat jump, and really just the squat, we're talking about the concentric phase, right? So this is the eccentric phase, this is the concentric phase. So I'm going to drop down and concentrically jump up, all right? So we're talking about the concentric phase, starting here and then coming up strong, okay? So what is happening to the knee joint from here to here, all right? The knee joint is extending, right? This is flexion, that is extending. We're extending in a closed kinetic chain stance, all right? So the joint is knee. The knee is extending, and it's extending in the sagittal plane. Ideally, there is no frontal plane movement, but you might have a little bit of wobble, right? So, you might have a little bit of a knee may duck in a little bit. You may see this, okay, which is going to involve some transverse plane internal rotation, and it's also going to involve some frontal plane valgus stress on the knees, all right? You might even see this, okay? So, but for the most part, flexion extension is going to occur in the sagittal plane. When you get to terminal knee extension, there is a little bit of tibial rotation in order to create kind of terminal stability in full knee extension. That involves the popliteus. So that's a muscle that runs. We'll get through that with the knee anatomy. All right, so that's your joint, that's your action, that's your plane. The agonist, the primary mover is what? For today, you can just put quadriceps. Okay, so we'll break down all the different quadriceps, the vastus group and the rectus femoris, okay? But quadriceps is your agonist primary muscle. If you have synergists, we'd have to break down kind of the line of pull or what vastus muscles are working the most. I believe we put sartorius in class today because it's another thigh muscle that's more of a helper than it is a primary mover. So we put quadriceps as the agonist primary movers. We put sartorius as a synergist muscle. Then what's the antagonist to the primary agonist muscles, the quadriceps? Remember, antagonist is antagonizing the primary muscle. It's opposing the primary muscle. So the opposite of the quadricep is the hamstrings. That's right. All right, so the hamstrings are the antagonists. The neutralizers, we didn't get into neutralizers too much. There's not really neutralizers for the knee, at least for today. If we get into the knee muscles in a few weeks, we'll talk about that. The stabilizers and the fixators, a couple things. And that's when we brought up the popliteal area, the popliteal muscle. That could be a stabilizer of the knee joint because it does rotate. And then you also get the fixators. The fixators, we'll talk about the core muscles when that comes into play. I'm mostly concerned with joint action plane, primary, synergist, and antagonist. Okay, so that's your jam analysis. Fill out that entire table. Clinical application. So neuromuscular concepts and programming in 101. Briefly define and describe the difference between strength and power. I want a pretty good definition of this. Brief, but pretty good definition. Don't just wiki it. Don't Wikipedia. Don't just Google it and write the first thing that you see. Think about this a little bit and give an example. Okay, strength is generally how much force you can produce, and power is how fast you can produce it. Okay, it's the difference between doing a squat. If I squat 300 pounds, all right, that might look like here and then coming up like that. I just squatted 300 pounds. You didn't see the bar, but I did. Okay, A more powerful squat, I'm still doing 300 pounds, but it's this, right? More powerful means more speed, more acceleration, okay? So figure out the equations for strength and power, briefly describe that, and then go back to the muscle spindle, the stretch reflex, and some of the biomechanical concepts we've discussed in class, and talk about how to improve an athlete's push-up power, question number 2, based off of strength and power. Force couples and exercise coaching. All right, so we talked about your scapular humeral rhythm. We broke down that a little bit. So if I do a pull-up, if I do a pull-up, why at the beginning of my pull-up might I tell an athlete to anti-shrug first? So you're gonna do this pull. I think I'm in camera, right? Yep. So the first thing I might have them do is begin to pull, but I want that anti-shrug. I want that depression, maybe a downward rotation of the scapula first before I do a pull-up. Why is that? What does that apply to what we've talked about in class? Break that down, mess with that a little bit in person and figure that out. All right, breaking down the FMS. So we talked about the functional movement screening class this week and last week. I want you to think about unilateral movements, meaning single leg movements. We broke down which each one of these are. So let me demonstrate. I'm gonna try to keep this video under 8 minutes. So the single leg box squat is sitting down on a box. No, it's not. I lied. The single leg squat, we talked about starting with a step back. So a step back is just seeing, can an athlete, can a client, patient control this step back motion, all right? We also talked about the fact that we try to keep our hips level here, that we want to stabilize in the frontal plane. We don't want to lose too much of that lateral tilt in our hips. If someone can do that step back well, we might bring in the frontal plane and the transverse plane by doing a little rotation there, a crossover step back. Then the single leg squat, think about a squat. A squat is going to be standing here, squatting down, coming back up. That's your squat. A single leg squat then would be to stand here on one foot, again, stabilizing myself in the frontal plane, going down in my squat and back up. So that's my single leg squat, okay? So ideally I may not hit the floor. If I do hit the floor, just the sagittal view, I just touch my heel, my leg stays straight, so I'm not using that leg at all. That's the single leg squat. The second one is the pistol box squat. Pistol box squat is coming off of a box in sort of a pistol position, right? So am I able to stand up there? That's the pistol box squat. The last one then is a split squat, or a Bulgarian split squat, rear foot elevated split squat. You'd write that RFE and doing a split squat here, okay? Then dictating, the height of the step. We don't get too much into the form and technique, but just ideas for unilateral movements and how that incorporates all the planes, very multi-planar exercises. That's why I like unilateral movements a lot. So using those, go through questions number 5, 6, 7, 8, and hopefully 9. 9, so using the stretch reflex concept, all right, and reference muscle spindles, what we talked about, the force times muscle length, the relationship, right? Why is single leg squatting, standing up from a lower box, more difficult than a higher box? So that was a 12-inch step that I knocked out with that pistol squat. Why is that tougher than doing a 16-inch box or an 18-inch box? So I want you to talk about why it's difficult. The deeper you go, the lower box you use as it relates to muscle spindles and the muscle length force production relationship. All right, that's what I got. That was kind of the quick overview of lab today. Review the Microsoft Word document, fill that out, complete that, and get that done by lab next week. And I will see you Friday at 1 o'clock. See y'all.